I can usually see this phase even before people have a name for it, even before you have a name for it. And that's not because I'm clever clogs and not because I'm guessing diagnosis. That is actually because the pattern that I see is very familiar. The way that someone is still functioning, still showing up, still sounding competent, while something underneath has already started to decompose. You arrive in my session and you don't look like a crisis. You look like someone who still gets things done. You're organized, you're quick, you're reliable, and you can hold a conversation and keep a house running and answer your emails and make decisions. And you can even tell a good story about how you're coping. And that is exactly the camouflage that I don't buy into. Because what I'm listening for isn't whether your life is falling apart. I'm listening for how narrow your range has become while you're still performing in it. The tolerance shrinkage that doesn't announce itself. The tightening of your throat that you keep calling being productive or being disciplined or just pushing through. And that is what compression looks like in your real life. You start managing your nervous system with control, with speed, with hyperactivity, with usefulness. And you don't call it a regulation, of course. You call it being on top of things. You call it standards. You call it, I just need to get through this week. Or you call it, I'll rest when this is done, with that big smile on your face. But nothing is ever done. So your system learns a very specific rule. Movement, hyperactivity equals safety. Being needed equals safety. Staying ahead equals safety. And the cost you're paying in places that they are quieter, harder to point to, and therefore for you easier to ignore. Your tolerance for friction drops. Not dramatically, just ordinary friction, a slow conversation, a messy room, someone asking you a simple question when you are already running tight, a plan that changes, a delay not foreseen, a phone call you didn't expect. It's not that those things are objectively heavy, but it is that your system has no more slack left to absorb them and then to deal with them in a timely, energetic manner. Your contact, your outreach gets thinner. Not in the sentimental sense, but in the practical sense. You can be in a room full with people and still feel slightly elsewhere because part of you is managing, monitoring, holding shape, keeping it together. And you're present enough to function, but not enough to be touched by the moment. Your range of recovery shrinks as well. You might still think to take time off. You might still sit on a sofa. You might still watch a series like the new Bridgerton. But it doesn't land as recovery because the system stays braced. Rest becomes another task you perform and you tick off your list. Even downtime is managed. And there's a line I say sometimes, not to be cruel, but because it's accurate. And if you recognize it, it will sting a bit. You are not coping. You are containing yourself in the worst possible manner. And that's the phase that I am always talking about. It's why you and other people can spend years working on themselves and still feel unchanged. You have insight. You can have language, you can know the patterns, you can even see the childhood links and the relational themes. But the day-to-day mechanism stays intact. Regulation through control, hyperactivity through speed, through usefulness. The person, you, keep functioning. And the functioning keeps tightening the loop. And this is also the moment when people begin to hunt for a name, for a diagnosis. They want something to pin it to. Burnout, anxiety, depression. Or they reach for a method. Let's do EMDR, let's do ACT, DBT, let's do EFIT, let's do IFS, let's do mindfulness. Because a method feels like immediate action, and action feels like relief. Don't get me wrong, I really understand that urge. And it is something that is from modern times. But my work doesn't begin with the label and the diagnosis. It doesn't begin with shopping for the right technique. My work with you begins earlier than that. It begins with the pre-label phase where the system is still working. And therefore, actually nobody, even you included, don't take it seriously. Where you still look fine, where you still can deliver, well, where the world is still getting what it wants from you, but at what cost? And what makes it very hard for you to admit what it's costing. And here's the part that people don't like hearing because it removes a very comfortable excuse. If you're still functioning, you can keep this going for a very long time. But at what cost? You can keep calling it normal. You can keep calling it performing competence. You can keep being the person who handles things until you can't. I'm sorry to say it like this, until you bloody can't anymore. Or until you do something much rarer, and in my experience far more intelligent. You stop waiting for collapse as proof that actually it is real what you're experiencing and living through. And now that's the work. Not the dramatic moment, the silent earlier one. The one where nothing is broken enough to force change, but broken enough and narrowing that the direction is already obvious. So I'll end it here. Thanks for listening. But if you want to read exactly where I stand and where this work begins and could begin, just look on the page and you will find my main page, Real Therapy Online. See you next time.